Hello, everybody, and welcome to the first official, at least I think it's official, Sky F1 Vodcast. I hope you're all staying at home, staying safe and protecting the NHS. What we thought we'd do, as is our duty to you, the Sky F1 viewers, is to bring you up to date with what we know about what's going on in the world of F1 and how everyone's getting ready for what might be the rest of the season at some point getting started. But for now, let me introduce my esteemed panel of guests. We're going to rotate and we're going to try and do a couple of these every week, but we're starting with Martin Brundle from at home in Norfolk, Karun Chandhok from at home in Hertfordshire, and Jenson Button at 4:30 in the morning across in LA. How are you guys? How are you keeping well? Everyone's staying safe, Martin?
Yeah, good. Hold up here in Norfolk. It's been sunny and lovely, I must say. It's, I was born 5 miles from here. This is where I've always lived, and pretty pleased to be here right now. But hopefully everybody's finding the way through this amazing, scary situation as best they can.
Karun, you muddling through?
Yeah, same as JB. We've got a little 1-year-old to keep us entertained and keep us flat out. So just trying to stay away and from other people and trying to hide away from supermarkets as much as possible, which is challenging at the moment.
Jensen, I was going to say, at least you've got a swimming pool.
Yes, well, I think I'm actually busier staying home than going to F1 races. Having an 8-month-old, it's busy. No one told me how busy it was with a child, but it's been. To be fair, we're definitely making the best of the situation, and we've spent a lot of time with our little boy.
You've got it easy. Wait till you have 2 is all I can say. Let's have a quick look behind you. Trophy cabinets. Well, there's a few trophies. Karun, I'm surprised you've actually got a trophy. What was that one for?
Shut up. All nasty.
That was Monaco, GP2. I was third in Monaco in 2008. So, yeah. And then that steering wheel, you can see there. That's one from Patrese in 89, from the pole position from Budapest, which one of the mechanics gave me as a present one year.
Ooh, so looks expensive. Looks expensive. What's that behind you, Mark? What's that, 92?
It's a Ferrigno picture of Silverstone 1992, where I lucked into third place behind the 2 Williams. Nigel won. The track was invaded by the fans, and I've got a memory. I'll never forget the guy who stepped in front of me and held a child out to get me to stop on the in-lap to Parc Ferme to get me to sign an autograph. He actually stuck the kiddie out front of my Benetton. It was just the most bizarre day. Gilles Villeneuve's Ferrari 312 and my Daytona winning Jaguar and just behind my chairman's seat here in the office. I'm chairman of one.
Beautiful. JB, is that you just got the blinds down on yours? If they're so laden with trophies that it's to stop them falling out, is it?
Yeah, well, I've been busy building a simulator. It's taken me a week to build this simulator. So I'm in the office of our new place. I didn't plan very well for this, but I can turn around a little bit. There's a Monaco winning helmet. And I'm going to turn around a little bit more, if that's all right.
Yeah, go on.
That's actually the World Championship winning trophy there in the toilet.
Yeah. What? Beautiful. That's the place to have it. Would you keep the loo rolls in there? Loo rolls are the most expensive thing in the world now.
And then here is where all the helmets and trophies are going to be.
It's a work in progress.
Yes. It's a bit of a mess at the moment. And then there's the simulator thingy over there.
So are you going to, just to come back to you on this one, JB, are you then going to be taking part up against Lando and Johnny and Anthony and trying to get involved in a few of these esport things?
Probably more like competing with Johnny rather than Lando. It's a lot of fun. It's actually really stressful because it's so difficult to feel what's actually happening because the rear doesn't slide. So, and for me, that was a big thing. I felt everything through my bum when I raced. So you jump in this thing and the steering feels great, the pedals feel great, but then suddenly you're facing the wrong way. So it's interesting. At the moment, I'm driving on ovals, racing in NASCAR,
right,
as you would living in America.
Good. Well, just go straight on like Johnny did at the first turn in Bahrain, and you'll be fine. You'll be ahead of it. Just cheat. It's easy to cheat in.
I've actually in sim racing there are less crashes than in reality. People are really cautious, which is weird. When I played computer games back in the day, I would just drive into everyone. It was a lot more fun.
Martin, let's go first of all. We do want to hear from you, by the way, over the course of the next few weeks. If you want any topics discussing, we've just developed a hashtag. It's very original. It's like hashtag Ask Crofty, except it's not. It's hashtag Ask Sky F1. So if you want any topics discussed, please do get them in. We're going to start, though, with where we think we're going to start this season. Now, obviously, everything's a movable feast right now, and there are far more important things in the world than motorsport. However, they've got to have start points for the sake of things. Teams aren't getting paid now. We'll come on to that in a moment. There needs to be a timeline drawn up. And right now, it kind of thinks like or feels like it might be start of July. What are you hearing, Martin?
I think it's so hard to know, Simon. I mean, we're a very international bunch of people. The F1 circus is tops 3,000 of us. And of course, any fans. And even when we're released out of this hibernation, I'm sure we're not just going to start zooming around the world as a group of people. So it seems clear to me that as every Formula One team can truck to a European race, that we might end up with a medley of those, or maybe even 2 or 3 races at Silverstone, for example, to get it up and running. Every 2 and 4 wheel championship and events like Goodwood are all compressing into the second half of the year, or probably even the final third of the year. So track time, marshals, officials, airtime on TV, it's all going to be so compressed. I think we're going to end up with this incredible string of blue ribboned events, assuming we get up and running at all. So it seems obvious to me that we'll truck to the first few Grand Prix and then see how and if and when we might fly to some of the long hauls.
Yeah, let's just be clear for the moment. There's only 2 cancellations that we've had. We've had Australia and Monaco cancelling. Everyone else is postponing, trying to find slots towards the end of the year, presumably if they're going to do what Martin's saying, between 15 and 18 races. Is there a case, do you think, Karun, that they might try a sort of straddled season, get some racing maybe in January? I mean, obviously they've moved the new rule changes down the line a little bit, but could you see that happening?
I think we're in unprecedented times as a society, aren't we, worldwide? And therefore, there's possibly a chance for F1 to do things that are unprecedented, do double-header weekends, as Martin mentioned. You could do a Saturday and a Sunday race, perhaps, just as a trial. You could do 2-day weekends and have, 2 or 3 of those in a row to try and condense and compress the season in. I think, this is a chance to be innovative and to be thinking outside the box with maybe a view to the longer term future as well. I mean, why not try things at this moment? I see it. Yes, it is a difficult situation, but you can also turn it into opportunity, perhaps, if and when we do get racing. I think there are other knock-on effects. Motor racing is a dangerous sport. We need a lot of medical support at the races, and therefore you don't want to put that additional pressure on that country's domestic medical staff. So there are other factors that need to be thought in at this time. So we just got to wait and see. But I'd like to see some lateral thinking when it comes to, the time arrives for us to start planning the future.
Absolutely. I mean, I suppose one of the main worries, Jenson, is, if we don't get racing this year, there are going to be a lot of teams, a lot of suppliers really struggling for cash, like in the wider world. And that's got to be a concern for the sport itself, doesn't it?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's not just going to be Formula One. It will be the whole world in terms of sport and the economy. So that's a much bigger issue than the sport itself. But I think we've got to be positive, and as everyone has in difficult times, we're doing all we can to make sure that this passes as quickly as possible. And hope it passes, and we can get back racing, because I think everyone's missing it, and when you don't have it, suddenly you realize how much you miss it, racing. So I'm hoping the season does start sooner rather than later, and I'd be surprised if like Karun said, that they'll have races on one weekend. I still think the schedule will stay the same with Formula One. I think it will, and I think it really should. I think having 2 races over a weekend takes away from it a little bit, the main race. But the excitement around a race, around a Grand Prix, when finally we can have one, it's going to be insane. You know, it's I think for sport in general, this is a tough time, but also coming at the other end of it is going to be amazing. The atmosphere is going to be electric.
Yeah, I mean, let's hope so. Let's hope that with the best will in the world, we can get racing at some point without endangering anybody or anything, and go there. And we do have this, you know, clutch of 15 odd races. It's going to be hard going, but great fun, I think, towards the end of the year. But going back to what I was saying, and having done a bit of phoning around some of the teams and trying to get the views, one of the team principals was saying to me that the knock-on effect of this, obviously, is they're trying to get through reduced budget caps for this. There is a chance that we could see the existing rules that were scheduled for 2021 to come in 2023 and not in 2022. Does that make sense? Have you heard anything on that, Martin?
Well, common sense is breaking out amongst most of the team bosses and the rights holders. I know it's been delayed to at least 2022, and it may make sense to delay it further because of the complexity and cost of an all-new car. While we get it, you know, clearly the teams are going to earn hugely less money this year. So you're going to have to cut their cloth. There are meetings going on this very afternoon here in the UK to change the cost cap that was set at $175 million, American dollars, plus, all sorts of things, top 3 earners not included, drivers not included, blah, blah, blah. So they're trying to now get that down much nearer to $100 million, certainly for maybe outside of the top 3 teams, and then try to compensate somehow. You know, they'll need to go to all of the stakeholders, the boards of companies like Mercedes-Benz and Renault and Honda, for example, and give them reason to justify staying in Formula One into the future. We know it's a brilliant global platform, and when we come out of this, everybody's got to get on and sell their products in the same way. So we've got to make it easy for all of those key decision makers to go, it's a no-brainer to stay in Formula One, and we'll get the numbers right, we'll get the competition right, then we'll have stability in the regulation, so we can lock out maybe chassis and engine development, we can control those costs. I mean, sadly, I think that means the headcount in Formula One will take a bit of a hit. Whether teams can find other roles for them within ancillary businesses, I don't know. But I like the sound of, you know, of the common sense, as I said, that's coming out right now.
Yeah, again, talking to a team principal, they're saying that a few people advocating for freezing the monocoque, freezing suspension, and only allowing bodywork changes for maybe it is the next 2.5 years, which means worst case scenario, they turn up at Melbourne next year with the same car that they had this year, and thereby reducing costs. But I'm with you on that one, Martin, that if you are reducing the budget to such a level, it's going to mean 200 or 300 people, isn't it, potentially having to lose their jobs. And we don't want to see that, but there's got to be a way through this. What about, Karun, and then on to you, JB, with regards to what we're seeing in football? Barcelona, Borussia Dortmund, Bayern Munich, a lot of the highly paid players, and I know that driver salaries sit outside the budget cap, but what about them taking a bit of a hit in order that the teams can keep going and paying a few more people? Is that something that you think they might be prepared to do?
I think there's conversations going on up and down the pit lane, isn't there? At the end of the day, if you look at it from a driver's standpoint, if they're not doing the 22 races of work that they were meant to be doing on the contract, there's an argument to say then they should be paid a bit less. So I'm sure they don't see it that way, and their managers don't see it that way. But I think at this point, they've all got to be team players. The world on the whole, we've all got to be team players, aren't we? And we're all, if Gunther Steiner is going to go to the driver and say, look, boys, we're all getting a little bit less money here from sponsors or the promoters. I need you guys to play ball a little bit and come to some sort of settlement. I can't see the driver saying no. I think it'll be a case-by-case situation. And like you mentioned, it's happened in football, hasn't it? They've had to take a bit of a hit, even big clubs like Barcelona, for example.
Yeah, absolutely. If you look at what Lewis is doing, pushing for a new contract of 50 million, 100 times the salary of the US president, 200 times the salary of the British Prime Minister. It's kind of hard to justify in the current climate, isn't it? Or isn't it, Jenson? Tell me. From a driver's perspective.
That's a lovely question. Yeah, it's a tricky one. I think you have 6 or 7 drivers as well that are only that are earning big money.
Yeah.
Most of the grid aren't, and obviously some drivers are bringing money with through sponsors and getting paid that way. But there are a few that are earning an extreme amount of money, and it's grown even since I was racing in F1. That's 4 or 5 years. It's scary how quick that's gone by. But yeah, it's a lot of money, but it's always difficult. You've been offered this contract with this amount of money, which is a lot, and to turn it down or say no, I'll take less for the team. I mean, it should be happening, but it's just a very different way of thinking for the drivers, and maybe it should be included in the budget cap. A driver's salary. You can choose how much you pay the driver, but then obviously you're losing out on development. So it's a tricky subject, and as a past driver, it's a very tricky subject for me, and I'm sure I'll be slated by other drivers for saying that.
Yeah, you never know who's watching this. Some huge viewing figures for this new program. So let's move it on, if we could, guys, to one of the good news or better news stories, and I suppose a demonstration of this sport at its best. And that is Project Pitlane, and what that's doing to help with the production of ventilators. There's a statement released today. Let me just give you a little bit of a summation, if you like, of what's come out of HPP and Mercedes, a breathing aid that can help keep COVID-19 patients out of intensive care, adapted by mechanical engineers at UCL and clinicians at UCLH working with Mercedes-AMG high-performance powertrains, has been approved for use in the NHS. The breathing aid is known as continuous positive airway pressure, has been used extensively in hospitals in Italy and China to help COVID-19 patients with serious lung infections to breathe more easily when oxygen alone is insufficient. Now, I'm going to come on to this because there's a few projects going on up and down the pit lane right now, and Pat Simmons, who's in charge of this, has been divvying them up. But if we can start with what's coming out of Mercedes, they're saying that this device took 100 hours of reverse engineering, if you like. They've scaled it up to the point that 100 have gone across to UCL, and they want to start churning them out at 1,000 a day. I suppose what it highlights is that F1 is a prototype business, isn't it? They're used to design and production, very well suited to doing this kind of thing, and it's been amazing to see how it comes together, Martin.
Yeah, I'm really proud of F1 with what they're doing. Having watched the whole saga in China and South Korea, I'm a bit surprised we haven't been asked to engage a few weeks before this, but it's the whole essence of motorsport and Formula One in particular. They have a problem, a technical problem on a Sunday in a race, have a solution by lunchtime on Monday. You don't convene meetings for later in the week, get onto it, and then have it in production by Wednesday, because we have an absolute deadline at all times, and that's the next time the start lights go out. So can do, must do, will do sort of attitude. And I think applying that, as indeed companies like Williams and McLaren have done for years now anyway, applied technologies for transport and healthcare and all sorts of things that contribute to society. So it's a perfect spot for Formula One to drop into and make things happen at the rate we are so used to them happening.
Yeah, Pat Simmons, I spoke to him a little bit earlier, and he was all over coming on and telling us a little bit more about this next week, when we're going to get a bit more information about this and the success of the trials. Let's be clear, though, it is 7, and it's the UK-based team. So it's Mercedes, Racing Point, Renault, Williams, McLaren, Renault, and did I say Renault? I've said Renault already. Haas, that have been involved in this. Red Bull as well. So with regards to that, as far as I understand as well, Red Bull have got a slightly different thing, an interim device, an intermediate device, which is sort of halfway between what Mercedes are doing and the actual ventilators. Some of the other teams are involved in the supply side, but Red Bull are actually getting into the manufacturing of this as well. So there's a lot of solutions being brought together. It's amazing to see the scale of it. Karun.
Yeah, no, I think that's, as Martin said, this is the amazing thing about Formula One, isn't it? You know, delivering design and manufacturing within such a finite amount of time. Sometimes between races, you know, you spot something on a competitor's car, and 3 races later, you've got to design it, manufacture it, validate it, and then put it onto your car in 3 races' time. And we've seen that happen time and again on track. So it's great to see some of those brilliant minds on the planet, I believe, work in our sport, and we're very lucky. You know, I think it's really important right now because of the sheer scale. I think, Simon, you were mentioning before, we need something like 30,000 ventilators in just this country alone, let alone, you know, the rest of the world that we're looking at. So any solution they could come up with, you know, Mercedes have gone down one path, as you say, Red Bull are looking for the next one along, you know, and this is even before I had a phone call this morning with a company in India who literally called me up to say, look, can you get in touch with F1? I'm willing to underwrite mass producing this in India because we've got 1.2 billion people here. This is going to be a massive problem. And, you know, I think this is where F1 can help, because we are a global sport. Yes, there's 7 teams based in the UK, and it's a very UK-centric hub in terms of the engineering. But Formula One's a worldwide sport, and I think we can help the world at large.
Yeah, 30,000 are needed. They started off with 5,000, and now it's up to about 8,000, I think, ventilators. But yeah, they're clearly scaling up. And again, talking to some of the others, it's about the supply chain, because they were used to producing the ventilator manufacturers in the tens a year, and now to get it up to that point, there's very few businesses, I suppose, that can do that. With your experience of what you've seen, Jenson, in Formula One, as you're saying, when the collective come together, and this is probably one of the first times that actually the minds from different teams are amalgamating, and that can only be a good thing.
Yeah, it's fantastic to see. You know, that there are some real brains in our sport. We also have the technology, we have the machines to build. And it's really good to see them being used for, you know, to help the millions out there. You know, we've been entertaining millions for years, and now we're actually doing some proper good, which is really good. And I think it's nice to see the whole community come together. And churning out 1,000 a day, that is unreal. I mean, there are not many companies around the world that can do that. So very special. You know, looking at what is needed in the States, I mean, they're in New York, they're hoping to have 140,000 ventilators.
Yeah,
I'm nowhere near that now. I think they're at about 40,000. But you know, our sport can do some real good here, and you know, I'm very proud of what Formula One is doing and what they can achieve.
Yeah, it does make everyone proud, I suppose, if you work in the sport and you know these guys as well, and they're working round the clock to get that out. And half of those ones, I think the ones that Mercedes are producing, are going to go into the XL NHS Nightingale places. Just go back to, if we could, Jenson, just turn it around to the fans at this time. Obviously, as you were saying, everybody wants to get back to racing. We have got these sim races going on and esports. But what can F1 do to look after the fans in the interim period? How do we engage with them and keep their attention?
Here we are. What we're doing right now. It's tough because we are all pretty much on lockdown, and you know, there's no racing out there. We want live. That's what it's all about. We want to see live sport. So I think the iRacing is a great idea. It's amazing how many people tuned in to watch Bahrain. You know, thousands of people tune in. I think that's only going to grow until we get a Grand Prix, a real Grand Prix back. So I think that is a great idea. They're probably going to get, you know, just the same amount of interviews from the drivers at those iRacing Grand Prix as they do in reality. So, and it's a bit of fun. You know, I think people are really seeing the true individuals come out. You know, race weekend is very stressful, and there's a full focus for the drivers. Whereas with sim racing, it's a little bit more relaxed, and I think they're seeing the true personalities come out a little bit more. So, you know, this might, they'll take this the wrong way, but it might be a positive in the future for the sport, of the drivers, of the personalities, of seeing the true colours of those guys.
Okay.
Lasers, it's our it's supposed to be our well, it is, hopefully at some point, our 70th anniversary this year. So we got such a a rich history and heritage and exciting footage. Some of it's scary from the old days. We luckily for us, we've got so much to look back on and remember, probably re-commentate on, enhance, and reconsider decades later as to what it all really meant. So I think we're very lucky in this business like that.
That's an excellent link, because that brings me on to the next thing that we're going to talk about. Bit of fun. So again, you can get who your top 5 are at home, but that's what we're going to do now. I've asked the boys, or rather I didn't ask, our producer Tim asked the boys, and Tommy and Scott, let's just get them all in, give them a shout out, to get your top 5 drivers of all time. Okay, now, JB, I know you've only just woken up. You're still in your pyjamas, and you probably, I don't know if you dreamt about it or you even knew that this was going to happen. So I'll let the other guys go first. Martin, come on then. You've picked your top 5. Who are they and why?
Well, picking the top 25 is hard enough. You're already taking pain at leaving some legendary racing drivers out of that. So top 5, it's so subjective. It's off the top of my head. What I wanted to pick the top 5 drivers I've most enjoyed spending time with, something a little bit different. But I would go Fangio, Clark, Senna, Schumacher, Hamilton. Would be, right off the top of my head, the top 5. But I feel guilty doing that because, Sir Jackie Stewart, Alain Prost, Niki Lauda, Nelson Piquet, all the great champions, JB. I mean, obviously, we when I talk about people I love being involved with, that's over and above my esteemed and lovable Sky F1 colleagues. But how can you leave any world champion out of that discussion? And then the multiple champions and those that were awesome, but never got to win a championship, like Sir Sterling or something like that. So it's almost a conversation that intimidates me because I feel guilty, even just cherry picking 5 out there. But anyway, I did.
You didn't mention Damon there either, so there we go.
Well, he's one of my esteemed Sky F1 colleagues, so I managed to navigate that.
Yeah, you swerved that. Come on then, Karun. I mean, he basically mentioned every great driver apart from a couple there. So we can all do that if you want. But who are you going with?
I gave you 5.
You gave me 5. I'm
going to go with Clark, Senna, Prost, Schumacher, Hamilton. It's my top 5. I think I don't know enough about Fangio, although it just reminded me of the books sitting on the shelf, his autobiographies, which I probably should read when we're in lockdown. I don't know enough about Fangio and that era of racing. I read Jim Clark's book over the last winter, and it was, what the man achieved is amazing. Simon, last year we talked so much, didn't we, about Fernando doing the triple, Indianapolis and F1 and Le Mans. Jimmy Clark, there you go, your Fernando Alonso super fan hat on.
It's not that I'm a super fan or anything. It's just he signed this for me, and I just keep it behind me at any stage.
Yeah, but I mean, Jim Clark, he had a year in '65 where he won the Indy 500 and won the Formula One World Championship in the same year. I mean, it'll never happen again. I mean, people like Prost, as Martin said, don't always make the top 5. It's easy to forget. I think, if you look at 10-year career between 83 and 93, he finished first or second in the World Championship 8 out of 10 times. That's an amazing record. Anyway, that's my top 5.
And that's because you've been looking at your scrapbook, haven't you, there, and just delving in. If you want, we can ask you anything quite literally, can't you? It's all in those books behind you. That is Karun's scrapbooks. Have you had time to plagiarise what they're saying? Yeah, JB, you can take who you want.
I've struggled to get less than 6, so I'm going to give you my 6.
All right.
And it's going to be my 6 while I've been racing, because it's the only way I can really judge them, because I've been on the track with them. I mean, I always find it difficult comparing someone like Fangio to someone like Lewis, decades apart, completely different sport. So for me, it would be, I'll stick Lewis in there, Lewis Hamilton. Fernando Alonso, been teammates with both of them. Immense talents in very different ways. Sebastian Vettel, doing 4 on the bounce. was a big deal. I really do think, and struggling a little bit more now, I would say, and going through some tough times with such a competitive teammate. But I think it's going to make him a better driver in the future.
I'm sorry to interrupt on that. I was just going to say, because the question: do you think that his reputation has slightly been dented by what's happened in the last couple of years?
I think this year, yeah, I think he's made some silly mistakes, which I'm sure he would say are silly mistakes as well. But I also think that he'll come out the other side of this as a better driver. I really do. You know, he's got someone that's really pushed him and beaten him throughout his season. So I think he'll come back stronger. You know, he has immense talent, and I think we will see that once we get racing this year. So that's 3.
Yeah.
Have to say Max Verstappen. You know, I didn't race with him for many years, but seeing his performances in tricky conditions like in Brazil 2016, I mean, that is just out of this world, staggering. You know, what he can do with the car. He always arrives at turn 1 for me, and he looks totally out of control. And any other driver would have crashed 5 times by the time he turns into turn 1, but he just keeps it away from all the other cars and just threads the needle. So Max, and the other 2 are from my early days in F1, which would be Mika Hakkinen. I actually watched the Spa race 2000 when he did Michael, when they both lapped Zonta, went either side of him. So Mika, and obviously the great Michael Schumacher.
There you go. So that will get you talking at home. I hope it will get you talking at home. Anyway, as I was saying, chaps, I think that's about it. I just had a 5-year-old and a 3-year-old burst in through that door there, and I had to usher them away like that politician did that time. But back down the door because they know it's close to dinner time. Thanks for your company. JB, plans for the day just around the swimming pool, I should imagine, is it?
My first thing is to feed the dogs.
Right.
and then probably into nappy changing. But Lazers, I think as you were talking about what we're gonna put on to keep the fans interested, I think we need to ask them. I think that's the next thing. Is you getting out there asking the fans and getting some good info back, and we'll do pretty much what they want.
We will. We're performing. Yeah, we'll perform anything you want over the next few weeks. Because frankly,
steady on those.
We've got nothing to do.
You will.
I will. Yeah, I'll do some mimes and puppetry, whatever you need. Maybe we'll get Crofty on for a stand-up set. We could get that. We could get that done. A comedy evening with Crofty. I'm sure that might scare a few people off. JB, thanks for joining us. I know you had to get up early. We'll leave you to Brittany and Hendricks. Karun, again, thanks very much. And to you, Martin. May the sun be shining and continue to shine on Norfolk. Just a reminder to everybody at home, please do stay at home, stay safe, protect the NHS. But as Jenson was saying there, we'd love to answer any of your questions, come up with some topics, and we'll do this as often as we can. Hashtag Ask Sky F1, also our at-home series. We've been recording some links in the gardens and around our houses with our best features from the last 8 years of Sky F1. First one is tonight with Natalie, tomorrow is Ted, and then hopefully a load more to follow. Thank you very much for joining us. We've very much enjoyed our first Sky F1 vodcast, and we'll see you again soon. I'm off to feed the devils. See you then.